Hi, Maggie Morgan, independent filmmaker, and welcome.
Hi, it's good to be here, Helena.
And I know you have been a filmmaker for many years. What sparked your love for film?
When I was a kid, my dad used to take me to the cinema, and a lot of the ideas that influenced me, I saw them on the big screen. I remember a particular one, but I wasn't that young. I went to Sunday school. They told us the story of Joseph. And I always heard that, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this correct, Potiphar's wife was a horrible woman who tried to seduce him. In my mind, I always saw her as evil. And then when I went once to the cinema to see a film that was made by an Egyptian director about the story, I could see the world from her point of view, and I sympathized with her. And I thought, wow, that's what I want to make people do, is to sympathize with the bad guys, or the bad guys, so yeah.
And your work through the years have focused a lot on women's rights. Could you share something about the major obstacles and the inequalities for women in the MENA region?
Oh my goodness, I would have a lot.
Yes.
But yeah, I've cared. I would say that I didn't start with women's rights. I care about human beings. And we live in a part of the world where a lot of people, women, children, older people, people from lower socioeconomic status, all these people are marginalized. But women, sometimes, they get the combo. They're everything. And I really cared about that. I grew up, I was very close to my grandmother and her friends. And so I saw that, people from an older generation, they didn't have the same rights or opportunities that my generation had. And then I realized it's not generational, it's privilege as well. And so I really wanted to work in this field. And I felt like, we always hear the stories in film, and also novels, by the way. You only hear the stories written by men about women. So I was very fascinated by the idea of people speaking for themselves, telling their own stories.
And what would you say in your work then, portraying women? How would you say are some of the strengths you have seen in women? You say that you have a heart for the marginalized, and within women they're marginalized in many different ways. But can you share some of the strength you've seen in portraying women?
Women have incredible, women, I think in general, but the ones I've met and I was privileged to be mentored by and to learn from, they have incredible resilience, I think. And I think also that in the Middle East and in Egypt, and not just in Egypt, but but I'm more familiar with Egypt. Women, have had this stamina really to survive, and sometimes to even thrive, in spite of the fact that they had much less opportunities. Just a few examples. Until today. Like, if a family has 5 children, 3 girls, 2 boys. The 2 boys get to go to school, and the 3 girls don't. If they really want to, then they have to get A's, because, why would we spend money on you if you're just average, right? And then you find that these quote-unquote average girls, they're not average. They're trying, and they're financing their own education. It's fascinating.
But do you see this changing at all, or is it
in society?
Yes, in society.
Of course,
yes.
It's changing, but not enough, and not for everyone, and not all the time.
No. So there's still work to do.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've been doing things related to women for over 20 years, and I've been working on this program called Today Not Tomorrow for a little over a year. And we had a meeting for some of our viewers, because they call us, and so we invited them to come to Sat7 to meet. And it was encouraging, but it was disheartening at the same time, because I was very surprised that they still had the same struggles about going to school and things like that.
Could you share a little bit about this program, Today Not Tomorrow? What's What's the idea behind the program?
We have a truck, big truck, and we go, the idea of the program is for the set is on the truck, and the presenters, we go to different communities, different villages, and we film there. And we talk, we always talk about gender inequalities. Sometimes that involves men, by the way, it's not just women. But we talk about, you know, the accepted religious beliefs that people never question. You know, we're raised to be very obedient, good girls who listen, especially to religious leaders. And so the premise of the program is to take some of these ideas and to just tell people, what if that weren't true? Just to give an example, a woman is beaten by her husband or her brother or her dad, domestic abuse. She goes to the priest and he tells her, he quotes 1 Corinthians 13 and he says, you know, love is patient, love is kind, love bears all things. And then he says, you know, look at how much Jesus suffered on the cross. You know, you can't compare your suffering to Christ. It's like your cross. And so we tell people, what if that teaching weren't true? What if that's not what it means? And so we've gotten a reputation for disturbing some of the religious leaders. Obviously not just the Christians, because this is cultural. It's Christians and Muslims as well.
And what's the, if you are, there are some, the religious leaders are maybe a bit annoyed by the program, but are the response from the women participating and from the audience, would you say?
Some of the women say things like, oh, we never knew, really? Like, I mean, sometimes people are genuinely surprised that this is not what the teaching about love means, for example.
So, and you shared before, I heard about a Facebook group where you, the viewers could participate, and you had a hope to have 300 people in that closed Facebook group, but
we have 6,500. It's just for women.
And
it's a closed Facebook group where people can, you know, share their stories and like even it's to help one another. It's not only, sometimes we have a psychologist have a session, but it's really organic. People give each other advice or talk or whatever, things like that.
So they can find support in each other?
Yes, exactly. That's very important, I think.
And the need was then obviously much higher than you anticipated then.
Yes, and the stories that people came up with, like, I didn't realize, I think when we started the program, I didn't realize that people had so many grievances against religious leaders and religious institutions that they were willing to share and talk about out loud. I did not realize that. I did not realize that people saw these things as gender inequalities. Like one of the people that came on the group, she was baptizing her daughter and the priest was mad at her for being late. She was feeding her daughter and he pulled her hair and he pushed her. So she came on the group and she said that story. And then like tons of people were like, oh yeah, this happened to me, this happened to me. Honestly, I didn't realize it was such an issue.
What would you say, what happens to people's faith when they are, what the belief they have is they're realizing, oh, this is not the walk of love, or this is not how we should behave. Do people keep their faith, or does it also become a struggle of their faith?
I think faith is not a static thing, it's a journey, and I think it evolves. And I think one of the things that we try to, do with the viewers is to tell people that, it's not like you're going to make up your mind today and this is how you're going to believe the rest of your life. It's a journey. So walk it, and walk it with an open mind, ask questions and keep interacting and so on. I think that some of the people lose faith in the religious leaders, both Christians and Muslims, by the way. And because, a Muslim viewer once told us in one of the screenings we had, like, God can't be that small-minded. Like, he can't really care if I cover my hair when I pray, and so it's a journey. She starts to ask questions and it goes on from there.
And working with filmmaking and in media for such a long time, what would you say why is that a good tool to lift women's rights or other social issues?
when I'm making a film or a documentary or a fiction, I don't look at myself as, it's not a tool for preaching for me. I find that I'm curious about the story, or I have a story that I want to tell, and I feel like somehow saying these stories out loud is helpful for the community at large. And the more voices that are out there, the better the world is. I think, honestly, in our part of the world, we hear one voice. It's usually the voice of the older men. So but I don't think that I make a film to help women consciously. That's not how I think.
So it's more to share a broader variety of stories than
yes.
to have other voices
yes.
to be heard.
Yes. I always think, if this is a table, who's sitting at the table, and how can we make room for more people at the table? That's in film, so who can we include that's not been seen? That I find to be very inspiring.
And I know that you have quoted Thomas Merton, and I would like to read a little bit of that quote because it really it stuck with me. Do not depend on the hope of results. You may have to face the fact that your work will be apparently worthless and even achieve no results at all. And what are your thoughts on that quote?
I find that quote ironically encouraging, because I think that, I have to be when we talk about gender and freedom of religion and belief and the project that I'm doing with Sat7, I find that I'm not responsible for the result, but I'm responsible to be faithful to the moment that I'm in now, and to speak the most truth that I feel at the moment. That I feel like that's what's mine to do. I can't, I can't tell what's going to happen next.
So then the motivation is more in the work that you're doing than the results.
Yeah, the process, but also not in numbers. When we're talking, let's say, about the Facebook group, and it's nice that we have 6,500 people, but really, it's much more fulfilling to talk to one of these people than to count the numbers, for me. And I think for all of my team, it's really about the one-on-one and what happens in an individual life. I think that matters very much.
Would you like, because I also know that you work with freedom of religion and beliefs. Could you share something about how you work with that and why that's important?
It's very tricky. And it's very difficult in the Middle East to talk about freedom of religion and belief, because it's not accepted. It's not acceptable, and it's not even legal, But I think the way we tackle it in our program is to say, for example, like the example I said about domestic violence, to say, what if you were free to think differently about this interpretation? What if you were free to think differently about, let's say, like a priest or a sheikh, a Muslim imam, is preaching and telling mothers to be better moms because the kids are, loose or immoral, as if there are no dads. And they say, what if that weren't true? Like, what if you could think about that differently? I think just telling people you can think about this is not given. It's not in Arabic we say it's not Quran. Does that make sense? Because the Quran, people think Quran is the word of God. You can't change it.
You can't touch it, or you can,
an expression in Arabic is it's not Quran. It's like you can think about that.
Yeah. And are people open then to rethink?
I think if somebody's oppressed, they're open to rethinking. It's the people that benefit from the oppression that don't want to rethink it.
The people with power.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And some of these people are religious leaders.
Would you say that when you are able to maybe rethink something that you thought was Quran, given, would you say that also empowers people when they realize they can rethink their lives or their situations?
I absolutely. I think when you realize that you can think and make your own conclusions, and you can trust your your own intuition. And one of our Muslim, she was saying, you know, when I went up the St. Catherine Mountain, I took off my veil. I thought, you know, God is so big, He doesn't care about the scarf on my head. You know, so she trusted her own intuition. She just threw it away.
And to finish off, I would just like to ask you if from Sweden, if we would like to pray for your work and for the MENA region. How would you like us to pray?
One of the things that I've learned so much from working on this project is it's not, and we have partners in all over the world, in Norway, Sweden, etc. But one of the things I've learned is just like an analogy. I live in Cairo. I have particular, you know, rights, privileges, and I go to a village. You know, it's not that I pray for them. It's not like that. It's like people, human beings are human beings. There's no cure for being human. We all have the same problems, more or less. The thing is, like, it's always good to keep in mind that when we go through something that is difficult or painful, it brings to mind someone else who's living in a different situation, who may be going through something similar, only they don't have as many rights or privileges as somebody in Sweden. Just to use a random example, if somebody in Sweden has breast cancer versus one of the women in the villages, the woman in the village, she's going to be yelled at by her doctor. Her priest is going to tell her she needs to pray harder, and she won't have as good of healthcare as somebody in Sweden. But if somebody in Sweden has the same situation, think of her and think of how much harder it is, and then pray for we.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.